IKE has completely warped the meta, and we've gone from one extreme to the next. So what has changed, and how do we deal with this? This is the meta report where we talk about all the goings on of the different game modes in Fire Emblem Heroes. It's been a roller coaster for a bit now, and we're just along for the ride. Let me know in the comments though, do you prefer tanks or nukes to have the power advantage? I'd love to hear from you. So the interesting thing about IKE is he's not only changed things because of him as a unit, but also changed things because of his fodder. We're not going to talk a whole lot about Lagoo's Friend 4, but keep in mind that it has also changed the way a lot of tanks work, and even nukes as well. This is a really interesting skill that folks don't have a lot of because we don't have a lot of IKE fodder yet. Keep an eye on that though. Here's a real quick look at the tier list that I had for just the tanks, and you'll notice that units like Corrin and Dimitri, the sole reason they've risen up in these is because of Lagoo's Friend. So first up, let's just look at what exactly is going on with tanking in general. And of course I have a nice IKE replay here. You're gonna see a lot of these because, I mean, this is the biggest thing in the meta. The way you deal with this unit mostly is through AoEs, and that means in light season, Gateau and Lumera just got so much more powerful. Keep in mind that Lumera reduces AoEs by 50%, whereas Gateau is going to give you an 80% reduction. But look at this, and you're going to see a whole bunch of rallies, things are going to ping around, and then that AoE does 12 damage. Like, a green is the premier IKE counter, and Gateau and Lumera almost negate him. It's something that you want to watch out for and something that we'll have to deal with. Also, if you're an IKE fan, Gateau and Lumera are your best friends. So next up, we have a Brave Corrin replay here, and I understand that Brave Corrin is not the most meta-influential unit, but I wanted to make the point that if you are not IKE right now, you are hurting. Like, your value generally went down, with the exception of Dimitri and Corrin, and they have some special circumstances that really play into Lagoo's Friend 4. But all of these defenses are going to be pushing to take out this newest of threat that is IKE, and they are going to be coming at you with all kinds of weird things like Tina, who got a huge bump. Any way that you can confuse the opponent is a boon to you. And Levin said he talks about this in a lot of his replays, but you want to be able to allow the opponent to make a mistake. The longer you keep them playing, the more likely that mistake is going to happen. So you're going to need to use weird units like Tina. The straight up cav lines are just not going to work from you. The last thing I want to talk about, the IKE emblem itself is fairly good. Now, keep in mind, we talk about IKE being the absolute best brain dead thing out there. I just did an entire week with Sharena. That was a rank 1 team all the way until the very last day. So I did that with Sharena before the IKE ring. That just makes things even easier. So keep that in mind on your favorites. So we've talked about ways you need to confuse your opponent, but what do you actually need as far as what's going into your nukes right now? So obviously the setup is key, but AoEs are going to be your absolute best friend. I know I just showed you Gateau and Lumera, but keep in mind, Astra Anima, you don't have those two. And even then, you saw a way around that by using Tina. Now, the other thing you can look at is Fatal Smoke 4, which is huge right now. That is big, and putting it on someone like Dual Leon can help you a ton with chip damage. The thing about those setups and what you're really looking for there is being able to chip down IKE, particularly with Duo Robin being able to keep IKE from proccing Great Aether really limits his healing, and that means that other units can come in and do damage. It's a fantastic thing. Be on the lookout for those types of things as we get new skills. So let's start with yet another IKE replay, and the big thing I want to hammer home here is the traditional nukes have dropped in value dramatically. Now, remember, this is a relative scale. Leon was at the absolute top of the meta. So falling down for him does not mean he is bad. Same thing with Duo Sanaki. These are not bad units, but their value has definitely dropped. Snaki in particular, the thing with her is you just have to be solo. It is very easy to have Ike be solo. He doesn't have any conditions where you have to be close to anyone else. So, and you're seeing it right here. I mean, Leon just does not cut the mustard. Now, a Fatal Smoke for Leon would do better for sure, but I still don't think this defense takes Ike down with that included. So here's where we start talking about rally traps, and in particular units like Duo Sigurd and anyone who can really do an AoE build here. I've got a green up there because I think she's the best AoE user, but right here I'm using Citrine, and you can see this is something that works really well on Ike. Now this is not in his bonus season. You may have a different thing that you're going through right now, so keep that in mind. But this unit still made very, very clean work of Ike. Keep that kind of thing in mind. Rally traps are fantastic. One of the things that enables them is Freyr, and you will want him on your defense. I have talked to a few people who don't have him yet. That is critical with how you want to have your defenses be more complicated right now. So let's look at the archetypes as a whole, and we'll look at these rally traps again just a second here. The thing I want to look, we've seen one where this actually defeats Ike, but what you are trying to get is something that is so confusing and extends the range so much that the opponent can't predict what you're doing. This is an excellent one created by Sea Dolphin, and you can see how far the range actually extends, where they were setting up for a player phase and just couldn't get it done. Now, this is an example of a great defense, if I'm being completely honest. The problem you're going to run into is great defenses take a lot of time to develop and can often take a lot of resources to really get going. That means that defenses are getting more expensive but can still defeat the opponent. The thing about cav lines is they're so frigging cheap. You literally just set your unit up, you don't have to worry about any kind of AI mostly, and you let them rip roar and go and destroy things. On that same note, I will say that Catria balls have gotten a bump. Now, remember, this is one of those things that this is relative. Catria balls were down in the dumps, but particularly in Astra season, they are a way that you can try and combat Ike. You still have to have a unit that does damage on him, keep that in mind, but something to be on the lookout for. If you have a creative one, you can probably make a lot of fun things happen. We just talked about cav lines, but I wanted to show you exactly how far they had fallen. This is just dumb, being able to absolutely sit Ike out there on an island against what once was the best nukes in the game and just take a vacation out there. Like, that's crazy. You add in someone like Lumera and you also get AoE reduction. There's not a whole lot you can do about this from the standpoint of a cav line. It's something you're just going to have to move away from. You go to more of the rally trap or even the Catria ball, you're probably going to be better off. The other thing I'll say is as things move back to the bulkier units, the thing that's going to drop in value is the hit and run style offenses. Those are really good against cav lines and those kind of high threat range teams because they tend to be frail. You're not going to be able to have frail teams anymore, so the value drops there. The last archetype I want to talk about is Gale Force, and understand that the reason that Gale Force has gotten better is because you're going to have to focus more on Ike. Up until Ike showed up, Winter Edelgard was the toughest thing a defense had to face. She just absolutely destroys everything in her path. So you're going to have to divert resources away from your anti-Winter Edelgard strategies to try to take on Ike. Sometimes you're going to have to sell out simply because fewer people use Gale Force than they do use something like Ike. So, Gale Force has gotten easier. Player phase, folks, celebrate. Oh, Summoner Duels. You guys just can't win lately. Summoner Duels is tough right now. So what you're seeing over here is the same thing we had talked about last time with basically the homogenization of the mode. We had been seeing that for a bit, and Ike is probably going to drive that even further. The thing that's really going to happen here, though, is raid bosses are going to increase in value. And you already saw this a little bit with seeing Male Alir in the 9th rank spot. Dual tanking strategies are probably the most reliable in Summoner Duels right now. Here's the problem with that. When you lose to a tanking strategy like Ike with your defense, it's very easy to say that's RNG, that's luck, it wasn't under my control anyway. When you're playing Summoner Duels, that means that there is a person on the end who is just outplaying you. And the way you lose to raid bosses is very frustrating. You just simply can't take them on. It is very much a knowledge check, and people talk about that with Fallen Edelgard and Surtur, and the piece that they don't mention a lot is the fact that knowledge checks are basically calling you dumb if you can't pass them. It's why Fallen Edelgard and Surtur were so toxic. While I don't think Ike is as toxic on Aether Raids, because generally you are going to be either using him or you are going to witness your defense fall to him. If you're looking at Aether Raids, I think this unit just makes a bad situation a bit worse. So I'm not sure where we're going with Summoner Duels, but it's going to be interesting. Let's look at some replays. So the replay I'm showing you is from Hábiluca. He posted this in the Discord, and Hábiluca is amazing. I'm going to leave a link into his stuff. If you haven't seen it, you need to. It's one of the things I look forward to with every video he does. It's something new and interesting. But you'll see right here, Ike raised and AoE's raised. These are complementary things. The best way to take Ike out, especially in Summoner Duels where you can't stack HP, is an AoE. You can see the way the opponent is trying to combat that is by using Gateau. We could probably talk about Gateau increasing in value, but I mean, that's a different story for a different day. Units that use AoEs like Dual Thor or Agreen that we've talked about a lot in this episode are going to gain a lot of value because a lot of times it's going to be the only way you can take them out. Just remember that Ike has that pulse smoke effect that can be detrimental. I also want you to pay attention to the fact that Hábiluca is so amazing that he's winning this without Dual Leon and with Legendary Edelgard. Hats off to you. The next thing I wanted to talk about was kind of the changing of the guard, and I am not going to tell you that Duo Dogger and Dual Crom are unusable. I don't think that's the case at all, but I think we have definitely come to the point where there are better options. They have aged a bit. We have Duo Crom, which I'm actually not a big fan of in any mode except Summoner Duels, but we also have other Doggers who can actually kill things. Duo Dogger has lost a step. But a big thing is seeing different units come in and take their place, like Duo Robin, who I am a huge fan of. I understand that the range that they provide their Hush Spectrum on is not the best for Summoner Duels, but I think the effect itself is amazing, and the fact that this unit comes with a lot of killing power, an excellent duo skill, and has that self-refresh, all of that leads to really creative play, which I'm a fan of and I think is good for the mode. Creative play good, solid 1v1, you just win bad. Summoner Duels has a long road to come back from where they're at, and I hope they do because I think the core of the gameplay is good, but we'll see how they end up doing that in the future. The last thing I want to go over is just some interesting builds that I've been looking at, and this first one I was coming up with I'm gonna call this free to play because this is a Grail unit. I recognize how much investment this is though, but this is kind of a template for how you can take out Ike. The big thing with all of this, you can probably leave all of this off except for the scowl effect. And you'll see that in both Kana and Robin. The fact that you can put scowl onto the enemy is exactly what you need to kill Ike, because that means that Great Ether is not getting off. That unit does not have enough speed to double anything. Like that is near impossible. So we haven't seen a ton of Ikes yet because folks are really waiting for May to summon for him. Once that happens though, you are going to probably have to contend with a lot of them in arena, and he's tough. So keep this build in mind and keep other builds. You're going to need an Ike counter. You're going to need to come up with something. This is a way to do it. There are not a lot of free-to-play ways otherwise. The other thing you can look at is putting AoEs and just taking the score hit, which depending on how many Ikes we see, I might suggest. We'll see when we get there. The added benefit to Robin is that you can use her in so many different places. And this is a defensive build and it works great. It's basically what I'm running. I will say that infantry pulse versus infantry null follow-up, that's a toss-up, depends on what you have on your team. I had infantry pulse because I was doing a thing, but you don't need that much investment to get her going. Occultist strike is really nice, but she does just fine with the skills she has. As far as Dimitri, this is the build, and this actually does really well. You run something similar on Corrin, but you have obviously negating Fang for legendary Corrin. But we're at an interesting point because Ike exists that folks are not going to be using a lot of sweep effects, and it means Null Counter Disrupt in general loses a lot of value. Enter Lagoo's friend Dimitri. If you saw this unit in Binding Worlds, I would consider it. I know how expensive that is. I'm just saying this is a lot of fun. If you are a spender and want to look more at Binding Worlds, or if you're just looking for build ideas for some of your units, go check out my latest Binding Worlds video. It was a lot of fun to make, to be completely honest with you. Members, you are amazing. Thank you so much for all you do. Y'all, take care and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon.